In this film, we're looking at two of the building blocks to do with community capacity building. That's building involvement and building equality. They're both very important around community empowerment. We also have a look at what community empowerment actually means in practice. Looking at the four building blocks of community strengths, first two, building skills and building organisations, fair enough, you know, I think that's kind of fairly obvious stuff. That's about individual learning and about organisational development or organisational change. But if you just did that, my fear is that it would all be a bit of a technical fix. You know what I mean? Like, people learn skills and the organisations are better organised, but it's more to it than that. You know, like, is it actually the bigger organisations who benefit from that? You know, where's the values that are coming into that? And we talked about empowerment. Well, you know, where does empowerment come into that, basically? So the next two building blocks head on address those issues, to be honest, and that's what I kind of like about this, I suppose. If it's going to be about empowerment, what a lovely bit of jargon that is. It gets thrown about all over the place. Here's some definitions of empowerment from past initiatives. One is about people having a say, you know, about influence, about being able to go to a public meeting or join a committee and have a say about services and what's going on in the community. That's one. That was the view taken in a white paper, Communities in Control, in 2009. It really emphasised that idea of empowerment. Interestingly, more recently, 2010, it developed into communities running public services, actually taking over the running of services, not just having a say. That's quite a shift, really. That's quite a different perspective. How well that might happen is a different issue, but it's a very different understanding of empowerment. And I like what Oxfam's got to say about empowerment. They've been doing this sort of stuff for years. That's their idea, is what it means. And I like this quote at the bottom: empowerment is not something that's done to people. It's about releasing their potential. And I think we've touched on that in different ways, this enabling approach. So the idea with the four blocks is that hopefully they are based around empowerment or empowering ways of working, and the two next blocks in particular are meant to address that. So I'm just going to nip through those. Building involvement. This is about how individuals get involved in their communities in particular, and also about how groups and networks involve people and contribute to local decision making. So involvement is the theme, you know, it's the sort of common theme, basically. It doesn't always happen. This is what I hear from people in community groups, things like this: I went down the centre and got ignored, I'm not going there again. Or Betty's our chairman, she's been it for years, she runs the group, we just let her get on with it. You know, it's the martyr person who kind of is active on all these things, and other people stand back. You know, you get that dynamic appears and things fall away. The meeting had paid staff talking all the time, not for me. I went to a meeting the other day and I think the residents were outnumbered about 4 to 1 by the community workers and the support workers and so on, all there with the best of intentions. So I think, can't we coordinate this? Do we really need so many people turning up to a new residents group? Yeah. We always have the annual bus trip. People are too lazy to come nowadays. Is that why they're not coming? Maybe the annual bus trip is not the right thing to be organising, but, you know, have we asked people, have we thought about what they need, how they might want to get involved? But we don't see Christina nowadays. She's on all those high-level committee meetings, mixing with the men in suits, you know, where somebody disappears from the group and gets involved in all sorts of other things. Not very supportive around involvement. So the way to look at this, just going to use a most incredible audio-visual display now to describe this. Involvement in groups is around, I hope you're impressed with this. You got this on film, yeah? It's kind of a mix of about getting into the group in the first place. Is the group accessible? You know, when you go to the meeting or an informal event or whatever, what reception do you get, especially if you're from a minority or whatever that is, in terms of being a man or a woman or black or white or whatever, or disability, whatever it is. What's the reception about getting into the group? And then within the group, what happens? Is it that the chair has been the chair for the last 20 years and nothing's going to change that one. We always do it like this, don't we? Well, that's not actually necessarily a very effective way of working. And what about from the group getting involved in networks where people maybe go as some sort of a representative? Well, who goes with what kind of backing from the group to do what exactly when they get there? You know, what are they saying? What are they representing? What's that kind of relationship? Worth having a look at that. Or they're perhaps in some kind of partnership that is actually making decisions on, you know, using funding, policy and stuff like that. Again, you know, who's involved in that? Is it our hard-working chair who does everything, you know, who leaves the group after 3 or 4 years because they're totally exhausted? So different ways of looking at involvement. So that's the third one. I just want to move now on to the fourth one, which we could catchphrase, call it building equality for want of a better word. It's hard to get the right term, but here we are. You could say it's you know, about equal opportunities, because will building skills, organisations and involvement only benefit people already fairly confident, or perhaps a white group on an estate at the cost of other minority groups getting involved? Will it be particularly more powerful groups in an area who are supported through capacity building? And will people who are perhaps in some way kind of on the edge or on the margins or not, you know, come into the meetings or whatever, will it in any way address what they need? You know, will it cater for that? It's all part of it. Will some people feel more empowered at the cost of other people feeling less so? So some fairly challenging questions about this. Lovely term, building equality. How can we break it down into something a bit more usable? 3 headings. You'll be familiar with these from different contexts. But one is equal opportunities, pretty much what I was saying. You know, is it actually the training course or mentoring or action learning or visits, is it really open to a wide variety of people in that area? Or is it one particular gang who always end up going on the visits or get involved in the action learning? You know, it's almost like asking yourself and being a bit of a devil's advocate question about those things. Not always the case, you know, sometimes it can be dominated by some particular part of the community. Second part of it is about just about appreciating the diversity of groups, you know, that we're working with often in communities. Are the examples we use on the training course sensitive to people's different backgrounds or different beliefs? You know, is it respectful of what sometimes people have got very strong religious views on things, and that needs to be appreciated? Or it may be that some provision needs to be, for example, women only, for women to participate at all in some cases. And do we actually challenge discrimination in the material we're using in the workshops and courses and so on, you know, or does it just kind of let things lie? I think it needs that, you know, to appreciate people are coming from often very different backgrounds. Certainly in Bradford, where I've worked on and off for about 20 years, there is a big issue about our different communities, almost like in silos, and there's not enough interaction between the two. I was in the authority for some time. I think we learnt the hard way. We were supporting multiculturalism. We were funding many different separate groups to be able to find strength in their own cultures and areas. But I think on reflection, the problem was we ended up with lots of silos. And what we then did was to encourage people to mix, meet, get together, join forces in different ways, and a whole variety of ways were used for that. And that's like the third principle, that lovely word, community cohesion. I'm sure you're working on this a lot. But, you know, how can the capacity building itself bring people together? Actually, joint learning and visits and trips and conferences and action learning is a great way for people from different cultures to get together without making a big thing about it. You know, we don't have to call it a great multicultural, ethnic mixing, whatever. We could just say, you know, we've got this course coming up, do you want to come along? And people will meet people from all sorts of different backgrounds and so on. That's a nice, easy way of doing it, kind of thing. Or does it keep people in their areas? Does it keep people in the silos? So worth thinking about that one. When I say that, I don't just mean cultures and faiths. Ages can be a big one as well, or gender or whatever. An example of building equality. Northwest Birmingham, this is just about a year ago, 2012, a housing partnership funded some building strengths, capacity building activities in order to bring people together from different parts of a very troubled neighbourhood, people of different backgrounds, different faiths, and I must say it went very well. It really worked well. Very good meeting, mixing and mingling of people of different backgrounds, and that was all part of it. You know, it wasn't made a big thing of, but it did help to kind of bring people together. So it means we can organise capacity building in ways that are kind of sensitive to that without making necessarily a big thing of it.
Falkirk is a very changing place. Over the past 6 years, the ethnic minority profile of Falkirk's changed dramatically. The ethnic minority population that was running at 1.75 of the population is up to around about 3.5, which is a dramatic effect on services. It's really been about making our service accessible to all the different diverse community groups that have been forming, informal and formal. Again, the method that we use, that it's equality is equal for everyone. We use the same method for everyone. We work with the people to find out what the cultural needs are. That's i.e. women's only groups for the Muslim ladies that we work with. The timings that when we have our groups, we work at weekends. We work strange hours into the evening to accommodate the needs of the groups that we work with. Again, this has put a demand, a cultural change on the service that we've had to do, so we've responded to the needs of our communities.
Equality is about fairness and about everybody, not just specific groups within society. Thinking about my own experiences, a few years ago I worked with, I undertook a piece of research looking at isolated older men, and particularly looking at the benefits of belonging to a social group, an older persons group. And I remember speaking to an older gentleman who was very deaf and very isolated, and I went through to his home to do the interview. And he was a lovely guy, had had a really rich life, lots of experiences. He'd been in the Merchant Navy, been very confident, been all around the world. And to meet him now in his really cold home was really, sort of really quite affected me. Anyway, during the interview, he was discussing with me how he'd been invited to go and be part of a local senior citizens group. Two ladies had come to visit him, and he'd been quite keen because he was isolated and he did want to be more part of the community. So he went along with them, and I asked him, well, how did it go? You know, did you go back? And he said, no, I didn't go back because I felt like a lemon. You know, I just went there and I sat, and they all ignored me. And it turned out that because he was really hard of hearing, and because they didn't realise that he was hard of hearing, he felt excluded. And they assumed that he maybe wanted to be by himself or wanted to have a wee bit of space. So they didn't want to intrude. So you have to, no matter what your work in the community is or what your group is, you have to look at, is it accessible to everybody? Are there any barriers that people might face? So it's really important when you're planning your work in the community or your group that you think about everyone in your community and if it's open and accessible to everyone.
As practitioners, how can we work in partnership with communities to build involvement and build equality